So hi, this is Nick Williams, and I'm very honoured to be sitting here with Julia Cameron. Hi, Julia.
Hello, good to be here.
Thank you. We're at the Alternatives event. This is the final lunch break of the Alternatives event in London, and I've so enjoyed your teaching. I've been really honoured to be on the receiving end of your teaching.
Well, I love this audience. I think Londoners are very brave. They've done a lot of preliminary footwork.
Yeah.
When I asked how many people used my tool, Morning Pages, it was everybody except for about one.
Yeah. Well, perhaps they were just scared to say no. But no, I think my sense of you from spending a day and a half with you is that you give people permission and protection to really dive into things. So I think that's why people are going deep as well.
I hope so.
So thank you. So I serve a tribe of what I call inspired entrepreneurs, people that are doing something that feels like their personal calling and their vocation. So it's something very close to their heart, and then they want to build a business around it so they can sustain doing it. So
right.
you know, I just want to ask you a few questions to help them along on their journey.
So we'll try.
Nothing for me at all. You know, I'm not interested in your answers. Sorry, what did you say?
I said we'll try.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that I'm very aware of, and I know the people I work with are very aware of, is this whole area of resistance. You know, how we are all incredibly creative beings. You know, that's the core of your work. But how we get up to so many different strategies for getting in our own way.
Right.
And people could look at you and go, you've been a screenwriter, you've been a journalist, you've got 32 books under your belt. You know, you've obviously got a handle on resistance. Now, I'm guessing that's probably not completely true, is it? But it's something you just learned to handle, is that right?
Well, people say to me, can you teach me how to be fearless? And I say no, but I can teach you how to have fear and do it anyway.
Wow.
And that's been my own story.
Yeah.
As I get smarter and older and more accomplished, my inner critic gets smarter, older, more accomplished.
Really? So it throws up new stories and new excuses and new fears, doesn't it?
Yes. It makes a little dust storm every time I try to work. And I call my critic Nigel.
Yeah, I've heard you talking about Nigel.
And
it's a nice way to humanise it, isn't it?
well, if you can make a cartoon character out of your critic, it makes it so much less powerful than if it's just this vague negative force. Yeah. So mine is Nigel, and Nigel tells me my books are no good, and I have
You've got deluded readers.
I have to go to my publisher and say, Nigel is killing me. Can you take a look at this book for me and tell me if it's any good?
Right.
And he'll look at it and he'll say, actually it's fine.
Yeah, Nigel's got it wrong.
And but Nigel is still very present.
Oh, wow. So how have you developed, you know, I don't know if these words kind of work for you, but I would almost call it like a professional core. So there's a part of you that's bigger than your resistance. How have you developed that part of you that sees beyond the resistance? How do you empower that?
This is where we're talking about Morning Pages. Morning Pages are 3 pages of longhand morning writing that you do every day. And what that does is make it clear to you, you know, I'm going to try and work today. I feel resistance. I think it's Nigel. Oh dear God, it is Nigel. How can I go to work despite Nigel? And what happens with Morning Pages is there's no wrong way to do them. So you start to, you say, I'm tired and I'm grumpy. And you'll hear your little Nigel perk up and say, oh, how negative you are. But there's no wrong way to do Morning Pages. So you say to your little Nigel, thank you for sharing, and I'm going to keep right on going. And that skill becomes portable and moves with you to your work life. So then when you sit down to work and Nigel shows up, you can say to Nigel, Nigel, I'm working.
Can't you say I'm working?
I also say to Nigel, it's just a rough draft. Nigel is sort of gullible,
yeah.
And if you tell him it's a rough draft,
he lets you off the hook a bit.
He lets me off the hook.
Great. So you've developed some really clear strategies to strengthen your creative core, and a bit of a distance then between you and Nigel.
Yes, I make Nigel a character, and I outsmart him. courtesy of Morning Pages. I miniaturize them.
Brilliant. I've heard it said, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what you say about this, that resistance is the ego's petty response to the magnificent impulse of our creative soul. How do you feel about that?
It sounds accurate to me.
But I think it's really important that people understand what comes before the resistance as well. Because often people get so absorbed in their own resistance, in my experience, that they don't see what came before it, the impulse. Do you find that?
Well, I'm not following your question.
That resistance can operate in a heartbeat for people sometimes, certainly can for me. I can just dismiss something straight away. But to recognise the very fact that I've gone into resistance means there was something good to resist.
I think that's very true. I think that often our resistance is loudest when we're at our creative best.
Yeah.
I found when I was writing screenplays that my critic would start yelling at me whenever I had an original scene. Because the critic is sort of like, if you picture an emotional clearing, and into that clearing goes different animals, and your critic is standing on one side, and if a cow walks out, he goes, "Oh, that's a cow. I've seen a cow." But if you send a zebra in there, he'd go, "Oh my God, what's that animal? Quit it, cut it out." And so your original scenes, your zebras, get attacked more strongly.
I heard you say yesterday that really struck a chord with me about how, tracking that your resistance shows you where your greatest creative energy is likely to be once you unblock yourself.
Yes.
And that's a lovely way of expressing it.
Well, in the Artist's Way book, there are tasks. There are 10 tasks after each week. And I say to people, do the tasks that have the most voltage for you, positive or negative.
So the thing you're most inspired about, or most resisting.
Yes.
Great. And just one final question. You've talked about it a few times, and I know your books of prayers kind of cover this. But this idea of being an instrument. Most of us love this idea of like being an instrument, being I don't know what you call it, a portal in time. I think William Blake called it. That we're bringing ideas from another realm into this earthly realm. What's your take on being an instrument?
Well, I think it's a very useful stance. I think when we are not being an instrument, when we're working out of our ego, we often get stuck and stymied. And then if you say, "Okay, universe or force or higher power, whatever you care to call it, okay, God, I'm going to let you work through me. You do it." Then you start to get some freedom. And you very often write things, and afterwards you go, "Who wrote that? That's wonderful."
That's either the best part of me or another part of me, or
Yes.
another part entirely.
Yes.
So do you often feel you're an instrument when you're creating?
Especially when I write prayer books. I wrote, we have a prayer book in America called Prayers to the Great Creator, and it's 4 different prayer books that I wrote. And I read it at night, and I think, who wrote these? But they calm me down.
Beautiful. Thank you. So thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you for watching this. I hope you found it useful. So we'd draw this bit to a conclusion. But also say you're running a webinar series soon, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to let people know about that. I'll attach some information. Did you want to say anything about it?
Well, it was terrifying.
At home with Julia.
At home with Julia. We had 5 little places in the house that we set up the camera and worked. People get to meet my dog.
Yeah, I saw some of it on the internet this morning. Lovely.
So they meet the dog, and they get to hear sort of the personal stories that go parallel with the Artist's Way book. And if they subscribe, they become part. You said you had a tribe. Well, I guess I'm looking to
you're building a tribe.
to have
your own
a tribe.
Fantastic.
And they'll belong to it and be able to ask questions and be able to meet with each other. And I think it fills a need.
Beautiful. So thank you. Well, I'll put all the details on, next to the video, so as people are watching this, they can find out Can I just finish by giving you a kind of personal thanks? For me personally, but I just, having spent this time with you this weekend as well, just how much richer the world is because you've helped people free themselves up to be as creative as they can be. So I just want to really thank you for what you do on the planet. So thank you very much indeed. Thanks for taking time to watch this.
All right.
Bye.